Hello, good day. We are so very happy to have with us this morning Webster Jr., IT specialist and consultant, and he's going to share with us some of his insight on this growing new technology. Webster, in layman's term, what is algorithm?
Algorithm you can think of as a set of step-to-step instructions. One easy example is how to bake a cake. Obviously, there are a bunch of ingredients such as egg, flour, sugar, and then there is a bunch of steps such as sifting and stirring. Uh, and at the end of actual algorithm, you get what you call a program. And a program you can think of as the output of a completed algorithm.
But tell me, how is algorithm able to replicate itself?
Okay, so algorithms are able to replicate itself through a process called machine learning. And machine learning is where you run a bunch of algorithms through a computer and it recognizes a pattern. And then when fed particular inputs, it would replicate the results of that algorithm. So that's how a computer learns.
So there is a stage in which it becomes autonomous. After you have fed in the information, you need not go over it from the beginning.
That is correct.
Ah, I see. Yes, this is very, very interesting. Tell me, how would you say are the old algorithms, systems changing the face of technology in the world in which we live?
Oh, it's definitely changed the way of technology by making a lot of complex, repetitive tasks easier. So, for instance, in the case of sifting through a bunch of information, uh, compiling it, generating a report for say senior management in a company, that process can be automated through algorithms that will actually go through the actual data that is generated and create that report. That's a lot easier than employing a bunch of people to manually go through all of that information and manually compile the report. So it definitely saves a lot of time.
If this is a given, it is bound to have adverse effect on some of the professions. I mean, traditionally, one leaned heavily on our research assistants to ferret out information. How does the new technology impact on, say, the professions of law, medicine, and accounting, where voluminous information is sometimes have to be gleaned?
Okay, so it actually helps that research assistant by automating some of the tasks that they might need to do. So instead of physically having to sift through that information, they can run an AI that can retrieve that information, a subset information that he or she needs, and make it actionable. So, in other words, it allows them to go through a much wider range of information, filter the things that they don't need, gather the things that they do need, and allow them to do their task a lot more efficiently. So it does help some professions. Unfortunately, it also eliminates some professions as well. But as they say, whenever technology occurs, a lot of old professions die and a lot of new professions are created. And an example would be the car. When the car was invented, a lot of people that used to rely on horse and buggy, they got obsolete. So there's always something new on the horizon when technology expands.
Let us look at medicine, for instance. The introduction of AI in the medical field. Um, how does it assist the doctor of narrowing down the what you would say the causes of the problem that might be existing.
Okay. So what would basically happen is a lot of medical information would be fed into the computer system that a doctor relies on. So basically, common symptoms of common diseases and the most probable diagnosis of that disease. So it would allow a doctor to basically service a lot more people than he or she would if they just came to the office. It would allow people to log in remotely, type in their symptoms, get a probable result, which a doctor can then review at his or her time. So it basically makes him or her more efficient in their practice.
And the small business person, how does it help that person to be um, more efficient?
Okay, it helps by minimizing the number of employees that that person might need in order to run their business. And I'll give you one example. There's a lot of paperwork in business, a lot of accounting, there's a lot of monitoring sales and all of that accounting information. If you have a certain AI that's developed, it would look at the sales, it would look at the amount that is spent, it would be able to generate a balance sheet on an hourly or a daily level. So that way, instead of needing a huge accounting staff, you might need just a few people just to monitor what the AI and the algorithms are doing to make them more efficient. In certain industries or business, you have robotics. So, say in a hamburger shop, there are actually robots that can make hamburgers uh, and do the work. So you might not need as many people in ordering. Instead of needing as many people at the ordering counter, you could introduce terminals where the customer could enter the order, feed the change, and get the change out. So there's a number of ways in which it can help a small business person.
How can AI assist us in modernizing our education system? Where you see there's such a heavy dependence on teachers and books and varying specialists. Is there some unique way in which AI can assist us in being more efficient?
Yes, it can. So AI in combination with videos and technology platforms such as YouTube could make a wide amount of information available. And I'll just pick maybe one or two aspects of education. One would basically be libraries. So the old days with libraries, you'd have to go physically to the library. You'd have to take the book off the shelf. You'd have to check it out. Um, Instead of going to all the trouble of doing that, you could have the system computerized, and then from your own home, you could actually reserve a digitized copy of the information that you need. And the other advantage too would be that a library is limited to books in that library. Now, with computerization and AI, it could give a person access not to just the information controlled by that library, but information controlled by many libraries. So they'll be able to actually get a wider um, amount of information and they'll be able to filter it to their liking. And in terms of teaching, with the advent of video platforms such as YouTube, it has expanded to a state where there are so many how-to videos that are done by trained persons and you can actually watch those videos at your own leisure and learn from them. And then the person making the videos, the teacher, depending on how much views that video generates, can actually earn money from doing it.
Is there some way in which the method of assessment of our students can be simplified instead of, being in this examination room with somebody sort of supervising? doing these 3 hour narratives? Is there some way in which the whole assessment of our students in educational institution can be modernized and simplified?
Yes, and I'll break it down into one or two parts, okay? One is in terms of the person that is doing the invigilation, in other words, watching the student while they're taking the exam. So now the technology exists that you could sit in a bedroom of your house and you could have a certain cameras looking at you and what you're doing. And that way, what you're doing can be monitored. So you don't need to physically travel to an exam room with a bunch of other people and actually be monitored physically. You can have 40 different people in 40 different locations taking the exam simultaneously, being monitored by one person on camera. And of course, there will be certain programs to detect if there are certain dishonest things that are taking place, and that will alert an alarm. In terms of the actual testing material, it allows content to be generated and fed to that particular student, and also it would have the answers, the correct answers to the content that is fed. So the person would be able to, on the computer with their mouse, select the choice that they think is the right answer. And within seconds after the completion of exam, it will actually generate a result. So that way, in terms of exam, taking an exam in invigilation, it makes it a lot easier.
Well, from what you have said, we're about to step right out into a brand new world with all the possibilities. I suppose with some challenges too, but there's no doubt that it will lead to greater efficiency and certainly a world in which I think we're all much more productive. It only remains for me to thank you, Webster, for coming and for giving us this introduction, and to hope that somewhere in the near future we will again have the privilege of sitting at your feet.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.